What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 99 of Into the Necrosphere, the final installment of the podcast before I reach that grand old milestone of 100 episodes. More on that in a second, but if you used your little digits to tap the screen on whatever podcast platform you listen to this on, or you click the YouTube link, you'll know that on this episode I am talking to Vitalii Vyhovs'kyi of the Ukrainian World War I-inspired black metal battalion 1914. If you listened to the show last week and you heard me talk about the records I was most looking forward to for the remainder of 2021, you'll know that their new album, Where Fear and Weapons Meet, was on that list. We spoke about the record, we spoke about life in the Ukraine, the black metal scene over there, his journey into metal, and we also took the time to do some commie bashing because, as all of you know, there are a few things that I enjoy more. Also, coming up later on in the show, I'm going to explain to you why Light of the Morning Star have created perhaps one of the first pure gothic metal records in a while that doesn't suck. I am immediately breaking my rule of that I set for myself last week when I spoke about the new Candyman movie, and I said I wasn't going to talk about movies on the show all that much because I did want to share my thoughts with you on the Many Saints of Newark, a Sopranos movie or Sopranos-related movie, and it is by no coincidence that my daughter is named after a character in The Sopranos. So, given that fact, you will probably be able to imagine for yourself that I was rather looking forward to this movie, and I've got some thoughts that I wanted to share. I'll also do the usual metal news and just kind of generalized ranting, so if you stick around to the very end, that's coming your way. In the meantime, let's talk about episode 100. So, update, the official plans that I had for episode 100, or I should say Plan A, is now scuppered. Why? I'm not 100% sure. I think this was really a case of schedules not aligning, and incidentally, for those that don't know, the plans were to have the guys from Voices in a studio in London and do a show there, something a little bit different and a little bit special to mark the occasion. I'm hoping that I'm still going to be able to do that at some point, but I just suspect that the guys are super busy getting or doing the final preparation before the release of the record. I know some of the guys have been on holiday, and I just think it was a case of schedules not aligning, which is a shame. It did mean that I needed to put out the bat signal, and I had two wonderful, benevolent souls that answered. So I am not going to make the same mistake that I made, given my well-documented superstition of telling you guys who's lined up. But what I will say is I have got two meetings in the diary this week, or two conversations in the diary this week, I should say. Either one of those two would be a great episode 100, and I'm going to shut the fuck up about both of them so that it's a surprise. But either way, I'll talk more about it should it come off. If it comes off, I suspect all of you are going to be very, very happy indeed. These are two guests that I've wanted on the show for ages, so this is not a step back or a downgrade or frankly even a plan B. These are guys I wanted on the show always, and now's the time to get them on. So I think the occasion will still be there, or the sense of occasion will still be there. But anyway, I wanted to let you guys know what's happening with episode 100, and be as honest as I can. Like I said, I'm hoping the Voices episode will still happen at some point down the line, but who knows. Final reminders just before we get this show on the road. Hit the subscribe button, leave a review, comment, like, share, do whatever it is that you normally do. Head over to the Teespring store, buy yourself a t-shirt, follow the show on social media, and thank you so much to everybody who's been doing that so far. Like I've said many times before, the support that this show continues to get week in and week out blows my mind. And on that note, hopefully I'm going to come close to blowing your mind over the course of the next hour. I know when I listened back to this episode, it blew my mind how many times I used the word right at the end of a question. I hope that's not going to fuck up your enjoyment of this conversation. This is Vitalii of 1914. So welcome to Into the Necrosphere, Vitalii. question I have to ask everybody at the start of every single one of these episodes as standard now, ever since we're in the pandemic or post-pandemic world, is how have the last 18 months been treating you? You're living in the Ukraine, right?
Yes, I am.
So how is how has the pandemic and how is COVID-19 and everything that's kind of gone with that, how has that been managed in the Ukraine, and how has that affected you?
First of all, hello, good evening, and thanks for having me here. And in regarding to the question, that was actually pretty hard. A lot of people lost their jobs, so we don't have that fine support from the state officials like it is in Europe, Western Europe, or in the States. So basically, here people were left on their own. For example, one of the guys from the band, he basically lost everything because he was doing a clothing business and all the shops were suddenly closed. So no income, no nothing. Some health issues, family issues. So it was really like tough 2 years.
Yeah.
1.5 years. But gladly, the world is going back to normal. And specifically in Ukraine, I don't know, maybe most probably like in any other country, just vaccinating slowly but steadily, going back to normal.
Yeah. Is everything starting to open up again now? Like your friend's shop, as an example, or the band member's shop, was that able to open up as well?
Yeah, everything is open for quite some time already, because we did have like a fall in a number of COVID cases. So basically all restaurants are working. I'm living in a very tourist city. So the city is accepting tourists. Hotels are working, restaurants, like everything is working. Though we are moving now into like from green to yellow zone. But whoever is vaccinated and has the certificate can freely go anywhere.
So they have like a form of vaccine passports there as well now?
Yeah. So we have agreement with the European Union, and we accept each other's certificates. And this is, for example, for some place to be open, like for a restaurant to be open, at least 80% of workers, of employees should be vaccinated. So the same for schools, same for banks, same for basically anything.
And have you had the vaccine?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So you're able to move around.
I'm able to travel. Yeah, that's a positive thing.
I haven't had it yet. I just had COVID, so I had COVID about probably 5 weeks ago. So I'm almost at the point where I could go and get it. And I say I wasn't vaccine. I'm not anti-vax. So I'm not vaccine hesitant, but I was definitely vaccine lethargic. And I will tell you now, I regretted that seriously when I was sick. So, I mean, it's like, I couldn't even, one of the things that went was my taste. I couldn't even taste this fine Camden Hell's beer, which I finally can start tasting properly again now. So did you catch it, or did anyone have it?
I did. I had my COVID this April, but my taste, neither taste nor smell wasn't affected. I just it was physical abilities were affected. I was very weak and barely recovered till now. Still working.
I was about to say, you look like a big boy as well. Do you lift weights? Do you hit the gym or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. Since my 15 years, not all the time, because I travel a lot. I lived in different places, so when I have possibility, when I have like a stable life without any rush, so yeah, I do. Since like for half of my life.
And what do you do when you go, like aerobics, Pilates, yoga, that sort of thing? I would assume you're a lifter.
Glass lifting.
I was about to say. Yeah, I would assume you're a lifter like me.
I didn't do like professional. I didn't do it professionally. I just like to keep myself in shape
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe gain some couple of kilograms on my working weights. That's it. No, like don't have any goals with that except
Yeah.
keep my weight under control.
And for me, it's also staving off dementia because one of I read a statistic recently that said if you like people that lift weights into their old age are something like 84% less likely to suffer from dementia when they get older because of that kind of constant mind body connection. And that to me settled it. It's like I'll be lifting weights till
Yeah,
the fucking day I die. So I'll be
yeah, I support that 100%.
I'll be on my deathbed going one more rep. So, but I did find getting back to weights after COVID, like the first like 2-3 weeks, that was rough. You know, you're out of breath. You fucking
Yeah,
pouring sweat.
yeah,
That
exactly.
was an interesting experience for sure. But
Yeah.
so 1914 was pretty busy as well during the off time, and obviously you guys are just about to put out Where Fear and Weapons Meet at the time that we're recording this. I will say to you, by the way, I'm a massive fan. I discovered you guys through I think it was Black Metal Promotions when The Blind Leading the Blind came out. That was one of my favorite albums of 2018. Then I checked out Eschatology of War. And I love the music, but I was also super happy that I found another band that has war as kind of the central theme of the lyrics. Because I'm a huge Bolt Thrower fan. I'm also very hugely interested in First and Second World War in particular, and kind of Vietnam, and First World War has sort of been an interest that's grown gradually. And I think it helped that around the time that I discovered you, I also watched the World War One, like Apocalypse World War One series, which is just absolutely incredible. I'm sure you've seen it, and it was very cool, kind of delving into your music and you covering a lot of what they have on the documentary and a lot of what people that are familiar with the history would know. I guess a question that I have is, where did this interest start for you with the First World War? Because clearly, collectively, you guys are all very, very into this. Where did that start for you? And I guess what made you decide to make that the focal point of the band?
Yeah, now I have to speak for our singer because everything comes from him. I'm more like covering the musical part of this band, but our singer, he's like hardcore into a war archaeology for last probably 15 years. He's digging up stuff, artifacts, dead people, and he was like, and he also doing music for the last 20 years, and he was experimenting with his other bands, singing about the First World War, but that was just songs, just the separate ones. And he always wanted to create something 100% dedicated to his passion, so basically his life passion. And that's how the band was created in 2014, on 100 years of beginning of the Great War. And it is like a band of friends, I must say. We know each other for years and years. We played a lot in other bands before. So, yeah, he just came up with an idea, like, I want to create something dedicated to the Great War. And guys told, like, sing whatever you want about. Like, we don't care. We just want to make music. And on the cross section, something happened. Like his idea, his passion about the Great War, and others guys' passion about music.
It's interesting, like because I know, and in fact, actually, correct me if I'm wrong. You came from the hardcore scene originally, right? You'd played in a couple of hardcore bands.
Our singer did.
Okay.
I play guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, our singer, he came from punk movement. He's a punk actually. So
Yeah.
he played hardcore punk band before. And yeah, I'm more into metal guy.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is, I've looking at some of the stuff you guys have been on. I know there's folks that have been in death metal bands, we've been hardcore bands, but it's so interesting when you all got together in a band. You hear it on Eschatology of War, and you definitely hear it on Blind Leading the Blind. But such a well-formed, cohesive idea of the music. It's almost like you're finally in exactly the right place. Like you're exactly where you need to be. You understand what I mean?
Maybe, at least I'm trying.
So one thing that I definitely hear when based on the tracks that I've heard off of Where Fear and Weapons Meet, it definitely sounds to me like a much more ambitious record. There's the sound is a lot more expansive to me. The songs feel there's like an openness to them. Still very intense, still heavy, still aggressive, but like it really feels like you guys kind of push the boat creatively on this, or push the envelope creatively on this record. Talk me through kind of some of the writing, the actual recording of the record, because I would imagine you guys weren't able to rehearse together or sit together in a room and write, certainly for the last 18 months, right?
I can share. Thanks for the warm words. I'll definitely share the story. So 2020 was not very productive because of the start of the lockdown, start of those restrictions. So we basically wasted whole 2020. We just started to create music maybe in the end, like November, December, and the complete album, everything was created within like 3 or 4 months. The end of 2020 and beginning of 21. Since we were like a bit in a rush because of some commitments, we just closed ourselves in my apartment with the DAW, couple of guitars, and we were just sitting there and creating riffs, jamming, how it happens. Like nothing specific in particular, just we knew we have to do this, and we just did it. It was the first time I was creating music in a rush, but this always happens like naturally. Here, this combination of factors, combination of things, a lockdown, some people who are suffering from different stuff, and at the same time you need to make an album. And maybe because of that, we hear what we hear. We just did. I don't know. We didn't have any specific goals of how should it sound or how should guitar sound, how should drum sound. We just did like what we liked.
Yeah. And as I said, I mean, it definitely sounds like. I mean, as I said, I love the previous records. It definitely sounds like there's a more kind of, there's greater cohesion in the songwriting, I think, but it also sounds to be a lot more ambitious. And one of the things I was interested in is I noticed that one of my favorite vocalists and from one of my favorite bands is guests on the record as well. So I know you've got Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost on a track called "And a Cross Now Marks His Place." How did that happen? First and foremost, and secondly, what was it like working with someone like that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. He's also my favorite singer from one of my favorite bands.
Yeah,
and other guys as well. So, for example, our singer, he's a fan of Paradise Lost since Draconian times. You can imagine. He has all the vinyl, all the CDs, all the tapes, like everything. And when we created that song, the song didn't have a vocal line at that moment, and the singer told, like, "Hey guys, what do you think about putting a clean vocals here? We've never done that before. Maybe let's try. Okay, so I don't have any prejudice in creating music, so like I won't be adding clean vocals
I was about to say, so
And
the rumors of
never,
you calling him a poser and and
yeah,
barging
yeah,
out of the
yeah.
room,
So
that's not
I
good.
don't have any kind of that things, and so we just were juggling people who do both harsh vocals and clean vocals. And the first name that came up, like number one in the list, was Nick Holmes. We were like, guys, he's too high for us, you know. But we had a couple of days of doubts of discussing with that thing, but then decided just, hey, let's just write an email. Okay, it's free of charge, so no one will be too far asking. This is how it happened. We wrote an email, received a request for a demo, entered the studio, made a demo recording, mixed, mastered that, sent out to Nick, and in like 2 or 3 days we received feedback that, hey guys, I really love the track and I want to join, I want to participate. And it was like a thunder in the sky, you know, when your favorite
I was about to say, you
artist-
must have nearly fallen off your chair.
Yeah, like yeah, I did. And we were stunned, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's basically how it happened. So next was the recording.
Is that so? You know, this show goes out obviously all over, and I can see where most of the folks are that listen to the show. The biggest, you know, the biggest audience I have is for sure, you know, North America, the UK, Australia. But I grew up in South Africa, and I was going to ask you a question which will make sense in a second why I'm asking it. But how many international bands do you guys get in the Ukraine? Like, how many bands tour in the Ukraine? You know, on a, you know, like, would you be able to see Paradise Lost once every couple of years, as an example?
We definitely have some shows, not that much as I could wish. But for example, a show of Paradise Lost is an event maybe once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
For example, we never had Metallica in Ukraine.
Yeah.
We never had Rammstein in Ukraine. But we never had Slipknot in Ukraine. But there are definitely some good bands touring, and I don't know. It all started, I would say, in 2004. Promoters started to bring in bands. For me, one of the first international concert, show visited by me, it was Hypocrisy in 2005. Their tour for the promotion of the Virus album. But yeah, I can see some posters once in a while on Facebook that something is happening. I've got half of promoters who bring metal bands to Ukraine now, basically friends. We know each other, so we follow them, you see. But for example, if we compare with Poland, it's like
night and day. Yeah,
not even close.
So this was the point of me asking that question. Like, again, growing up in South Africa, I grew up in, you know, during isolationist time, so we had no live bands. And then later on, you know, they started to drip feed through, but again, it's like maybe once a year, and it's a big event. But my point is, I don't actually think people realize what a big deal it must have been. Or a lot of people wouldn't realize, I should say, what a big deal it must have been to get that response back from Nick, for him to say, you know, this is, you know, I really like this. Because when you're that far removed from you know, the bands that you love and the music that you love, and especially if you're really into the music, you know, again, people don't realize those are the people that, you know, you spent your childhood having their posters up on your walls, you know, and you really probably had to work very hard to try and find their music, because there's no music shops all over the place, and obviously we didn't grow up with the internet.
Yeah.
So, you know, to get that response and that kind of feedback from him, I mean, that must have been absolutely mind blowing for you, right?
Yeah, that was just crazy. I was keeping that in my head, like spinning around for a couple of days. Just couldn't live with that in my mind. Honestly, I still cannot believe at some point that this has happened. Yeah. this is awesome feelings.
And when you got the when you got the tracks back that he had recorded, your thoughts, did you kind of feel like he nailed it, or did you feel like did he exceed your expectations? What was it like hearing that for the first time? Like, that's my music, that's my riff, and that's the dude that's saying gothic, Shades of God, Draconian Times, Icon. I mean, the list goes on. That's that's the voice behind that.
Yeah, so there's a big difference when you hear a clean vocal recording and when you hear it mixed and mastered within a ready song. And I did have some mixed feelings, but we also had a collaboration with an awesome singer on the previous album, with Mr. Ingram from Benediction. And I know how it goes when it may sound absolutely different. It may sound disgusting. It may sound like not that you were expecting for when you hear it for the first time, clean version. But then, like Nick is so professional. He knows how to do stuff, so it sounds awesome while mixing, after and after mastering.
Yeah,
and this is what happened. So though I may not like some of passages, some of the words, some of the intonations, but when it came to a mix, when we received a first rough version of the mix, everything was absolutely different. It was amazing. So Nick knows how to sing, so it fits perfectly into the mix.
So it works well.
I didn't have any doubts it will be awesome, but I just had to calm down the guys a little bit because of that first impression. We almost spoiled some stuff, like we planned not to include clean vocals, for example, and that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah.
We just had to calm down, sit a little bit, and let our sound engineer do the job.
So just as a sidebar, if you on future records, we were talking about guest vocalists or guest artists, like who's sort of the dream person that you would want to have on a 1914 record? Because something just popped into my mind right now that I'm gonna give you as an idea for the next one. We'll see if you take it. But
for me personally, probably Mikael Stamme from Dark Tranquillity. But this is like my highlight of a musician. I'm a fan of the Gothenburg death metal scene for many years. I'm pretty sure the guys would have a different opinion, especially our singer who listens to a lot of music and he came from punk movement. So I think that would be someone from maybe Misfits or Exploited. I don't know. I cannot speak for him. But for me, another highlight would be working with someone from Gothenburg scene.
So here's the idea that I had, and it's not him. Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride.
Oh, you're like my weak places.
That would be amazing. He'd do it too. I'm pretty sure he would. I've had him on the show. He's a fucking awesome guy. And I'm pretty confident if you approached him the way that you did, Nick, I'm very sure he'd be down with it.
Who knows what ideas we have in the future for the future collaborations. Everything can happen, absolutely. We definitely have some ideas already, but you never know.
So a question that I had for you, because we kind of touched on, growing up in a country where music wasn't necessarily as freely available as it was in the States, and there weren't all that many shows. My understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Ukraine was essentially under communism until like the early 2000s. Is that correct?
No, Ukraine gained independence from Soviet Union in 91.
91.
Yeah.
And then and once that happened, was that kind of the end of communism? Things kind of started to move, I guess, towards more of a free market kind of society, which, by the way, this fucking fly that keeps flying past this camera, I'm going to pull some Second World or some First World War shit on that in a second.
Shoot it with a flamethrower.
I was about to say I'm going to break out one of those trench flamethrowers. But yeah, so how you know? So let me ask you this question: how old were you in 1991, and how much of that time can you remember leading up to 1991? And then the other thing I'm curious about is how much did life change after 1991?
I was born in '89, so I was 2 years old when Ukraine became independent. I grew up in '90s, so it was like my early child years. I didn't understand a lot at that time. We had some currency changes, when we abandoned Soviet currency. We gained our own. It was temporary until in '96 we got our currency that is at the moment. Everything became expensive throughout the years, like constantly, because this is like this is very common for third world countries like Ukraine, inflation, all this stuff.
Oh, we had that in South Africa as well. I mean, the governments artificially devalue the currency so that they can export more. But it doesn't really help anybody else in the and on top of that, they issue a lot more debt because there's no way that they can fund all the things they've promised to the people if they don't have more debt. And if when you issue more debt as a country, you're printing more currency. There's more currency in circulation. Currency is worth less. Yeah. But I mean, that exact same thing happened in South Africa. I remember. Like after 1994, when when everything changed and we kind of became the new South Africa, I remember going into a shop one day and the price of like a can of Coca-Cola had gone up by, I mean, seriously, 200%. And you're like, how the fuck did this get this expensive this quickly? And it's almost like every time I go there on holiday now, it's the same deal. Like you go in and you look at the prices, like Jesus fucking Christ, how did this happen? But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but.
No, it's okay. We didn't have that dramatic changes. We did have we did have it once or twice after the revolutions. Maybe or not. I don't know. We did have a couple of revolutions when people elected some like absolutely dumb fucks for the presidents, and the majority was not agreeing with that because the elections were fabricated. So when we have like a friction like that, we have lowering of our currency value, and it happened a couple of times, like in 2004 and before the war in 2014. The problem is that Ukrainians always elect some really, like, I don't know how to call them, the presidents who are very dependent on Russian money and are very pro-Russian. Like when we have a patriotic president who wants to work in Ukraine, who wants to improve the quality of life here, like all the media, all the Russian propaganda machine starts working against him, and he's like discredited, bullied, and dismissed, and no one remembers about him. And that happens like constantly, like every third probably president is a good one. And when only he starts working on something really valuable, at the next elections, people just spoil everything again, and it happens again and again. I think we are cursed.
So why do you think that happens though?
Too much time under Russia, under Russian influence. People were just dumped, Soviet regime were eliminating the educated people, the artists, like the elite. The elite was exterminated during a lot of years, since like 20s until maybe, I don't know, 90s, until the Soviet Union collapsed. And people were just dumped. They tried to make people dumb because the dumber the people are, the easier is ruling. So this is what I see, what is happening right now. So this is like a huge propaganda machine, and it's really hard to deal with that. Like a small Ukraine being attacked by it's just ugly.
And I think that's something that a lot of folks that are, aren't familiar with the First and the Second World War, they don't necessarily realize how much of an impact that ultimately ended up having on the Ukraine. I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that the impact of the First and Second World War on the Ukraine can probably still be felt today, right?
Yes. Just a couple of days ago, I read the news that a company was having rest in the Carpathian Mountains, and they started a fire, like a campfire, and there was some projectile underneath, and it exploded and killed two people instantly. There were like two families with kids. Luckily, kids were not harmed, but you see, like 100 years have passed, and ammo from First World War just killed two people in 2021. Yeah. Ukraine was a battlefield basically for both of these conflicts. During the times of the Great War, Ukraine was divided between the Austro-Hungarian Empire, western part, and the eastern part was under Russian Empire. And we had one of the biggest battles on our territory, Brusilov's offensive, winter operation in mountains, and the Second World War basically the same. So everything, they came from west, passed through whole Ukraine, and then it happened again in 5 years. We have a lot of different companies, like, I don't know if correctly to name them a company, maybe organizations who do archaeology official. They dig up soldiers, they send them back to their relatives. Artifacts are being sent to museums. We have a lot of reenactment in Ukraine. The Great War, the Second World War, like everything is covered pretty well. We have museums. So it had a huge impact on us.
You mentioned about the projectile a couple of years ago when I was living in Kingston in London. I got a knock on the door from the police, and they were like, "We've just discovered a unexploded World War II ordnance in a lot that they were busy redeveloping into flats." And I said and we're basically clearing out the entire neighborhood. I said, "Okay, so just out of interest, what's the blast radius of this?" And he's like, 400 square meters. I was like, "Fuck that." I was out of there, and while I'm out of there, I was on the phone to the insurance company. Right, how much to insure my speakers, my hi-fi, my TV?
That's crazy.
But I mean, I would, based on what I know, I would expect that Ukraine would have had it slightly tougher in that regard. But one thing that I was interested in, I briefly dated a Ukrainian girl, so she told me a bit about this. But the time prior to 1991, obviously, I know you were quite young, but stories from your parents or family or friends or anything like that. What was that like? Because the stuff that she told me just blew my mind. Like she told me stories about how you would queue up basically for food, and some folks would have to queue up for food for like 2-3 days, and then by the time that the shop opens, the food's already gone. Or they would kind of open it up, and then people would be beating the fucking dog shit out of each other to get food, all because of how the government worked at the time. And as I said, when she told me that, obviously this was, I saw her prior to all the goings on in Venezuela, so where you saw a lot of that shit again. But it just blew my mind when she said it. Like I couldn't possibly conceive of something like that.
Something like that happening in 21st century, right? Or 20th century. My father once told me when I was very little, like not even a year old, he had to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to a milk shop. I don't know how to call it correctly. The shop that sells milk, like sour cream, everything related to milk, like butter. We had it separately from other. So there was milk shop, meat shop, like butchers, and the groceries were like everything was separate. he had to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to a milk shop to help them unload the truck that brought goods to the shop. So they gave him 1 liter of milk for me to prepare some food, like for his little son. That was a harsh reality. It was impossible to buy clothes. So you had these like a small like tickets, and tickets for buying like a pair of shoes were given to a family once in 6 months or in 3 months, and I don't know the time frames. But you had like a ticket for buying a coat, ticket for buying a shoes, ticket for buying like a shorts, and everything was strictly limited. So like once in a year you get your ticket, so you go and use it. And when you come to a shop, there could just be like no size, for example, and you cannot use your ticket.
Yeah.
So you're selling this ticket to anyone else, and to get another ticket for something that is actually available in a shop, that's just, I don't know, it's a catastrophe. It's an unimaginable horror.
And after 1991, obviously that all started to go away, right?
Yes, it started to go away. The borders were like plus minus opened. A lot of people started going abroad, specifically Poland, Germany, and bring goods from there. So we started having something more than the Soviet goods. They were actually really shitty quality. Yeah. Now, what can I say? Now we have like everything like anywhere else in the world, basically.
You've got KFC and McDonald's, like everywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So conversely, does it blow your mind that in the West there's this hankering after from a lot of people for communism, and that kind of extreme form of socialism? Because it really does me. I mean, I've spent a lot of time studying up about communism. I've read a lot about history, and I really do think that in the West, the biggest failing ever, I mean, there's 2 big failings. Number one is the kids in school don't get taught about how finance and the economy works at all. So they go out, squander their money, and then they put their hands up and say the government now has to help me. But then secondly, when they get themselves into that position, then they become resentful, and that in turn leads to this crazy embrace of socialism and communism. As somebody who didn't directly live through that, but at the very least felt some of the after effects of that and had family members going through that, do you kind of look at it and just shake your head and go, what the fuck are you on about?
Yeah, of course that's harassing me, because we live through it. We know that doesn't work.
Yeah,
people, it doesn't work like at all, like, and neither at that time, no, now it will not work. Like, it's total crap and shit, that communism. Of course I'm shaking hand, but I cannot make people I cannot stop them from being wrong. I don't have enough energy. I tend to spend my energy for my closest friends and family, parents, and I just had to deal with that, accept that the world contains stupid people.
Yeah,
you just can't do anything. So it's like a drop of water in the ocean,
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. I'm way past the point of, I've gotten to a point where I don't really feel it's worth trying to debate people. I mean, I'm certainly not spending any of my time trying to debate people on Twitter about anything or on social media about anything. I feel like I've got a certain number of years, if I'm lucky, that I'm going to grow old, that I'll be able to be 75 or whatever the case may be when I croak. But I feel like in that time, I'm going to devote that to things that I find enjoyable and that I find positive and pleasurable. I'm not going to spend that time arguing with people that frankly don't want to be argued with. I mean, these people are so ignorant of as I said, of the basics around history, finance, economics.
Yep.
You can argue with them until you're blue in the face. They buy into all of that nonsense, and that's what they believe, and that's that. It's like trying to argue with people that believe the earth is flat. So now, and twist in the tail is you're going to tell me I believe the Earth is flat. So, I'm just joking. I was going to ask you though. So in the backdrop of all this, the Ukraine has actually got a really cool metal scene, and particularly an extreme metal scene. I mean, obviously everybody knows about Drudka. You know, there's you guys, and there's a lot of bands in the Ukraine. How connected are you to the scene? What is the scene like in the Ukraine generally?
Okay, I'll try to elaborate on that. We have a lot of very talented people, like a lot of my friends in top Ukrainian bands. I don't feel, I don't know, there is some sort of movement. There should be some sort of movement in every country, in every city. But in Ukraine, everything is like someone divided everything by 10. You know.
Yeah.
To take that Poland, okay, or Czech Republic, every small city with like 30,000 of inhabitants have a cult punk bands, like, or hard rock bands, or metal bands, or like grindcore or something, and that was lasted for years and years. And because of that iron curtain and Ukraine being under Soviet Union, so the metal was banned in Soviet Union. They didn't allow people to form bands, to play live, to support that culture. So when we gained independence, that movement basically started from scratch, I'd say. Not from scratch, because there were people like fans who were mailing with the bands from Europe, from States. So we knew something, very little. But basically after in the early 90s, we just started. We were like a newborn kid.
Yeah.
When the world already had like a more monsters, like, I don't know, Morbid Angel, Obituary, you name it. The movement was very strong in the world at that time. And about relation, I definitely feel relation to that music scene, Ukrainian. A couple of months ago, we just played first 2 shows since the beginning of the lockdown, like first 2 shows in 18 months. And we met a lot of cool guys, our friends from different bands from other cities. And yeah, I definitely feel that connection. I'm maybe not necessarily like, we do not play in Ukraine much.
Yeah.
We tend to play more in EU, where our music is, I don't know, I wanted to use the word value, more valuable to people, but probably it's not correct. Just people more like us, and promoters ask us to go and play there. We don't have that much requests in Ukraine, so we do like maybe two shows a year, 1 show a year, like very little. But definitely the connection is there in a place, and my friends won't let me lie.
So I was about to say, so for anybody who kind of mistakes, the scene in Ukraine to being similar to the scene in Poland, as an example, it's polar opposites. I mean, like you mentioned, Poland, a town of 30,000. If you look at the number of bands they have, probably 10,000 of them are all in black metal bands. So
yeah, Finland is very famous for the number of the bands.
Yeah.
Per capita, they have like the highest rate in the world, probably.
Just out of interest though, so like when you guys play a show in the Ukraine, how many people would you typically get at that show?
We played. It was a presentation show for The Blind Leading the Blind back in 2018, and we have a sold out show of approximately 500.
Yeah,
people. The club for like 500 pieces, and I don't think if we gather the same amount, if we do like, because sometimes bands do 2 shows in a row. When we have when they have sold out show, they just book another date.
Yeah, yeah.
And the day after. I don't know if we were able to repeat that, but yeah. And I noticed that on the festivals, people like wear merch. You see it. So we have some
Well,
support
I
here.
mean, I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, this next record, I'd be stunned if it's not particularly well received, or if it doesn't show up on a lot of top lists of the year. Um, so I do think, you know, I think the time for 1914 has come, and as I said, I'm pleased that I discovered you before that happened. But I really do think that I think this album is gonna do very well for you.
Thanks. Much appreciated.
By the way, I also really like the kind of stage vibe that you guys have with the army fatigues and the gun for with the mic stand. But your vocalist must have a nightmare getting that gun through customs if you guys are when you go on tour,
I
right?
just wanted to mention that we sometimes have like hard times getting that through customs, but in 99% of the cases, they just don't notice it.
Yeah, yeah. Now,
It's
my
funny.
friend's about to move to Australia, and he's shipping a bunch of stuff over from here to there. And I watched you know, there's these shows like Border Force and Australia Border Force and whatever. I watched them chainsaw through somebody's speedboat the other day because they thought they detected drugs in it, and he's got, you know, a very impressive hi-fi set, really great speakers, you know, all sorts of cool stuff. I was like, how are you going to feel if they scan it and they see something in there that they don't like, and they drop the chainsaw on it, and when you arrive in Australia, they're like, sorry, sir, we had to chainsaw through your speakers because we thought that it contained narcotics. So,
Yeah. Or a dildo in the luggage during the flight. Yeah, can also open it. And
yeah.
they start vibrating. You know, they think it's a bomb, ticking bomb.
Yeah. So what are the things that, you know, with 1914, if you think about this new record and you just think about the band generally, what are the things that you would love to kind of achieve with a band that you haven't done yet? You know, what are the challenges, the milestones? You know, what are you kind of looking to do with this band in the next couple of years?
This album is not released yet, but we already started working on our new music because we have a lot of ideas. And I would say the main goal is to bring those ideas to people. So we always state that we not about music, we about storytelling. Our songs are like stories because a shit ton of investigation and of research is done to write a single lyric for the song. And we would very much like, because people start to forget, you know, especially here, when the Soviet Union just erased the memories of the Great War because they didn't accept anything except the Second World War. They were like, we are big fucking winners and all this propaganda stuff. And we would very much like to bring that message to people, like to make them read, to wake the interest to history. And this is our main goal, basically. We receive a lot of feedback on our Facebook page, on Instagram, and people are writing, for example, one of the most heartwarming messages was a man had a reunion with his father, with whom that they didn't speak like for 15 years. They were in argue, but his grandfather, great grandfather, he was taking part in the Great War and knew his father is like keeping some family artifacts. And after listening of the album, he just break that he broke this 15 years conflict and just came back to his father, and they were talking and drinking and discussing, looking through old family photos. So this is the main goal, to have impact on someone, to change the world. Maybe it's too epic said, but we want to bring this to as many people as possible.
That research, if when you're going back, 100 years, in trying to research things that, as you say, were destroyed by the Soviets, and at the very least, there was an attempt to erase all of that. It must be really hard to try and find accurate information, or to try and research some of those stories that you're looking to tell.
In the era of internet, we have a good possibility to do this. Our singer, for example, has access to one of the biggest archives of Great Britain, of United States. So he has access to really interesting information. And going back to a song, "And the Cross Now Marks His Place," this is the actual letter. This is the real letter written to a mother of a soldier who died. And this letter was found in the British archives. And so actually now I don't think it really matters on living we in Ukraine or in a different state, because this is the era of internet, so you have access.
Yeah,
you have access to information. If you were making that research in the 80s or 70s, that would be a problem. If you request the books or literature from the officials, you could be visited by the KGB.
I was just about to say,
yeah.
if you did that in the 80s, then they do the old erasing you from your family photos.
Yep.
That's another thing I find mind-blowing. Like you go back into history and read about some of the things that the KGB did, and if they wanted to get rid of you, I mean, they literally would like manually erase you from photos, or get rid of photos that you were on. I mean, you when they disappeared you, they really did disappear you.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people here, especially in the Western Ukraine, were affected by the actions of this force, I would say, because Western part of Ukraine was a long time under Polish rule or Austro-Hungarian, and we were not accepting communism like more than the East, because East was affected by the Holodomor, the famine created by the Stalin. And they killed a lot of Ukrainians, millions and millions of Ukrainians, and replaced them with from Russia. So they are more polite and obliged to follow this. And people in the West were more like rebellious, I would say. And a lot of, like, for example, take my wife's family. Everyone was affected by that, by KGB. Everyone, like you name the person from like grandfather, great-grandfather, grandmother, all the families, at least one time they were repressed or visited by, or asked the questions, or my wife's grandmother, when she was like very young, with her great grandmother, they were almost replaced from Western Ukraine to Siberia. They were just taken off the train at the very last moment. And a lot of people were replaced. They were just taking people from here and moved them to Kazakhstan, to Siberia, to like.
You kind of talk about Stalin earlier. I don't know whether you've ever read a book called Cannibal Island.
I don't think so.
So Cannibal Island is basically a story about a labor camp, I believe from 1933, and there's a book written about it. Basically, it was in the middle of Siberia. They shipped a load of people off there, and then they, if you got on the wrong side of the government, then you'd get loaded onto the ship and get taken there. The thing that's one of the most harrowing things about the book is the way that the book opens, because it talks about this guy arriving on the island, and he sees this tree with all these people crowding around it, and then as he comes closer, he notices that on the tree there's someone tied to the tree and is hanging down. And then as he then further investigates, he realizes that they're busy eating a human being, like the people that are crowded around are eating the person that's tied to the tree, because that's the level of desperation they had in their hunger. And again, I'm a big believer in, if you understand history, you can avoid making the same mistakes in the future. I do find it just astounding when I see people walking around in a hammer and sickle T-shirt, or anything that promotes that sort of thing. Because for me, that's as egregious and as evil as walking around in a swastika T-shirt or promoting something that the Nazis did. It's the same thing.
Maybe even more evil.
Yeah. But Cannibal Island, very, very interesting book if you haven't read it. And there's another one as well. I'm trying to think. Jordan Peterson spoke about it a lot. He also said something that I thought was very interesting about, like, us as human beings, part of the importance of understanding history and learning history is knowing that all of us have it within us, because this didn't happen, 500 years ago. It happened in, in relative terms quite recently. All of it have it within us to do exactly those same things, given the right set of circumstances. And I think it's only when you recognize that you can actively prevent those feelings from settling, into you. Because I mean, if you think of the Nazis, you think of Russia, the bloodthirst that followed, for example, Russian occupation of Germany was just astounding, and a lot of it is born from resentment and hatred, exactly the same way that the Nazis were in the 1930s and the 1940s. But I think it's very important that you confront the fact that as human beings, everyone has that dark side potentially to them. And if only by recognizing that are you able to, get those emotions or exercise those emotions out of you and spot when it's happening, in your city, community, country, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, agree. 100% agree with you.
But anyway, all right. Listen, my brother, I really appreciate your time. Again, as I said, I'm super excited to hear the rest of the record. And I hope at some point you guys will be swinging past the UK and bringing the gun microphone with you and playing for us over here.
Yeah, we have some plans. Hopefully everything will be okay. The borders will not be locked. So because the UK is a dreamland for me to tour in, like a personal highlight. I have some friends there I wanted to visit, and just can't wait till it happens. Waiting for.
Dude, I'm pretty sure you'll find a very receptive audience here. That's for sure. And again, I really appreciate your time, and hope at some point down the line we get to catch up again.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It was a good talk.
Awesome. All right, dude. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
was successful, and our guns reached and established new position. Later in the night, the enemy shout our
You just listened to a cut off the new 1914 record due out on October the 22nd via Napalm Records. The song is called And a Cross Now Marks His Place. Those of you who are astute listeners and who were paying attention will have recognized the voice of Nick Holmes of Paradise Lost. Of course, Vitalii and I spoke about that during the conversation as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this record. I think this track is great. And I'll almost certainly be talking about it in more detail when it gets released. But thank you very, very much to Vitalii for coming on the show. Great guy, and really happy to have had him on. So I hope you guys enjoyed that also. On now to some new music, and I wanted to talk about the new Light of the Morning Star record, Carnal Noir. It is available on Deborah Morty Productions. Light of the Morning Star, of course, is a solo project featuring a shadowy figure who calls himself OA. He has been active under the Light of the Morning Star banner since 2000 and I believe 2014. Put out an EP in 2016 called Cemetery Glow, a full length in 2017 called Nocta, and Carnal Noir is his second record. Normally, if you stick around to the rant section on these podcasts, most gothic metal, in my view, as much as I'm a fan of Paradise Lost, although I don't really regard them as gothic metal, but most when I see gothic metal, any sort of band bio description, I usually turn off almost immediately because it instantly evokes visions of men dressed in lacy cravats, crying about their girlfriends leaving them and pretending to be vampires. Vampirism is one of the subjects under discussion on this Light of the Morning Star record. However, I think what sets this project aside from many of its peers in the scene is the fact that rather than evoke this kind of saccharine, sweet, boring, almost kind of poppy goth vibe that a lot of bands do, like Death Stars, Crematory, and other horse shit like that. I think the goth influences when it comes to Light of the Morning Star are really focused specifically around, or really stem from, Fields of the Nephilim. So that means it's really, really dark, really impactful, and quite relentless in its atmosphere. And that is then kind of tempered by, these really cool flourishes of post-punk, and a definite tip over the hat on many occasions, actually, to second wave black metal. And as much as it's not, kind of pure black metal, this, at least in terms of, I think, atmosphere, mood, there's definitely, you can hear that OA has played himself a couple of Mayhem records in the past. It makes for a fantastic record, in my opinion. I think the production really suits it very well too. It's kind of almost lo-fi, which again kind of recalls the black metal elements that I mentioned before, but it means that it sounds, impactful, hard-hitting. I think the songs are varied and interesting. There's a couple here that sort of recall the halcyon days of Sisters of Mercy, back on albums like Floodlands. But there's also a lot of other stuff here that's, just brooding and almost suffocating in their darkness, or in their embrace of the darkness. But I love it. I think this is a great record. I think you will like it also, whether you are a goth metal naysayer or not. This is a song, or my favorite song, I should say, off the record. It's called Ghost Moon. You just listened to a track called Ghost Moon off of Carnal Noir by Light of the Morning Star, available right now via the always reliable, always excellent Deborah Mamorti Productions. And fun fact for those of you that are keeping score or like statistics like this, last year's best of 2020, at least my top 20 of 2020, I should say, 4 of the top 5 bands were Deborah Mamorti Productions bands. So they do seem to be coming out swinging for the fences at the end of this year, or as the year comes to a close. Will they be able to repeat the same achievement that they did last year? Time will tell. What I can confirm for sure is that I have got my co-hosts for this year's illustrious, prestigious Best of 2020 special lined up. Part 1 will feature the grim black metal tastes of Kelly T, now co-host of the Slaves to the Underground podcast. And then part 2 will feature my friend Mike Hill of Tombs. I love catching up with both of those folks, and they both have a very distinct taste in music, also distinctly different to mine. So I figured that would kind of be the best way to cross-pollinate and hopefully give people a lot to chew over whilst they mourn my absence over the new year, because wonderful news, it sounds as though they are going to be raising the red alert or red status, I should say, off of South Africa in the next couple of weeks, which means that my ass will be out of here at the end of the year, and I will be back. I think my last episode will probably air, or post, I should say, air. This isn't a radio show. Will probably post in the second week of December, and then I'll be out. I'll be in South Africa until the second week of January, and when I come back, I have a lot to catch up on. So I suspect I'll probably be out of action and give you all a breather from the relentless grimness that you experience on this podcast every week until about the end of January. But anyways, that's a long way off in the distance, and before we get even close to that, it's time to pick through the latest news headlines. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk about the Many Saints of Newark. I mentioned it at the top of the show, and I know that I said I'm going to make this a movie review show, but you guys like movies, I like movies, and it's my podcast, and I can talk about whatever I want. So I'm going to talk about this movie because I was looking forward to it. I'm a huge fan of The Sopranos, and partly because I was a fan, or because I am a fan, I try to keep my expectations, leveled, but it was harder and harder to do as we got closer to release date. It turns out that even if I had managed to force those expectations way down into the very bottom of the barrel, David Chase and Alan Taylor would have found a way to scrape a little further down. This is a failure of a film on many levels, one of which is the fact that as a movie, it completely falls apart because it presupposes that anybody who watches the movie is not only familiar with but intimately acquainted with Sopranos lore. It feels like, the way that the movie is edited and put together, it feels like basically extracts from multiple episodes of a year-to-4 unseen season of The Sopranos that has just been kind of cut out of those episodes and shoehorned into a 2-hour movie. So much of the film kind of ambles on, doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. There's these scenes that have context if you know the show, but really don't feel like much more than glorified flashbacks. I think most of the characters are really underserviced. Vera Farmiga as Olivia Soprano, for example, is fantastic, but she's only featured in a couple of scenes, and they never really mine what is a very rich story there. Junior Soprano, again touched upon briefly, not really expanded on a whole lot, save for his hand in an absolutely ridiculous ending. Johnny Soprano, Tony's dad, spoken of, brought on, I think, for about 3 or 4 scenes, but again, has no real major impact on the story or on the movie. And then for all of the talk of Michael Gandolfini's brilliance and how he's, the spitting image of his dad and emulated his father, and it was, ghostly seeing him on set. He is in the movie for the grand total, and this is a optimistic estimate. He's in the movie for a grand total of about 10 to 15 minutes, no more. So he's there. There's a couple of scenes that kind of feel like they're going to get the movie going, but, not really. And why is he not in there? Or why is he in so few scenes? It's because the filmmakers decided to concentrate instead on a character that was never actually seen in The Sopranos, but he was spoken of. He was the father to one of the main characters in the ensemble, Dickie Moltisanti. Problem is, Dickie is not only poorly written, but he is also a pretty dull character who has some extraordinarily questionable reasons for doing the things that he does in the movie. Those things tend to not include anything mafia related. So if you're in the mood for a gangster movie, I mean, this is definitely not Scarface or Goodfellas or anything like that. I mean, there is, from memory, I think maybe one or two references to anything related to the business. There's a whole bunch of things that kind of run through the movie, like the New Jersey race riots, that are kind of there, but why they're there, you never really know. You can't really figure out. You know the filmmakers had an idea there, but they never really went anywhere with it that is in any way meaningful or impactful. You have Joey Coco Diaz, a phenomenal comedian, great podcaster, as part of kind of the old guard of the family. He's underutilized. The kind of sharp wit, the humor, the awesome dialogue from the show, that's gone as well. So with the exception of seeing Vera Farmiga as Tony Soprano's mom, Michael Gandolfini, playing a younger version of his dad, seeing some of the old sets, and seeing a couple of things that connect back to the show, especially if you know the show really well, that's cool. Outside of that, it's a fucking absolute flop of a movie, and anybody who says otherwise either is deluding themselves or has vastly different taste to me. So yet again, this proves why I have said what I've said before, which is I am just going to stick to watching old stuff. I'm disappointed on such a consistent basis by anything new that comes out. I don't really see the point of investing my time when the chances are more than likely I'm going to think whatever I've just watched, if it's a new movie or a new series, is shit. The only exception might be this new Squid Games that I see is on Netflix. I think it's called Squid Games. It's a Korean series. I've noticed a lot of people on social media going on about how exciting, how cool it is, and I need to check out some Korean cinema. It's like I've only been talking about that for more than the last 10 years. Korean cinema, unlike Hollywood muck, is still generally very interesting and very cool. But I'll give that a try. I'll give the season finale of Better Call Saul a try, and there's one or two things I'll try out. But beyond that, fuck all this new shit. Until the wokerati lose their grip on Hollywood and they actually start making decent stuff again, I'm out. I'm out the shit. I am, however, rewatching I'm rewatching The Wire. And if you haven't seen that show yet, 1,000,000% stop doing whatever you're doing, including listening to this podcast. Book off the next several weeks at work and watch it. It is absolutely phenomenal. One of the absolute best shows ever to grace television screens. It is a nose away from The Sopranos and Boardwalk Empire and Narcos, in my view. In contrast to the many Saints of Newark, a masterclass in storycraft, character building, phenomenal acting, everything about it is fantastic. So, on that note, like I said, I'll now finally get to the metal news, but thought I would just share that with all of you guys. If you're listening to this, consider this a public service announcement. Avoid the Many Saints of Newark, and fuck David Chase. So over on Metal Storm, the first headline that we read is Devil Driver part ways with guitarist. As you can imagine, I'm absolutely devastated by this news. It has caused me to question whether there even is such a thing as loyalty or forever in this world. No, I don't care, because the only Devil Driver album that was worth anything was the first one. Couldn't care less. We move on. Testament US tour dates with Exodus and Death Angel rescheduled. I suspect we will see a a variation on that headline many times over the course of the next couple of months, which really sucks for the bands. And you hope that they don't lose a lot of money in all of this malarkey, but you suspect that the way that the world's going, they most probably will. Either way, I really do look forward to Testament coming to these shores again. I would love to see them, and I would really love to have Chuck Billy on the show. So anyone who knows him, hit him up and tell him there's a metal podcast that is so bold, so great, and so phenomenal that he needs to clear out some time in his schedule and come and talk to old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere. Massacre premiere music video for Whisper in Darkness. There has been an awful lot of the old guard putting out new music this year. Much of it, including the new Carcass, which I'll talk about more in a second, has been virtually unlistenable. The new Hypocrisy is kind of okay from a riff perspective, but Peter Techtren seems to be vying for the winning spot in the contest to write the worst lyrics in metal in 2021. But I must say, this Massacre, all of the singles actually I've heard of this Massacre record so far have really impressed me. I've really liked it. So this music video is for Whisper in Darkness, part of the highly anticipated fourth studio album Resurgence, which will be available on October the 22nd via Nuclear Blast. I'll definitely check that out. But yeah, good. I mean, they're not doing anything that's vastly different to what they've done in the past, or is kind of hugely unique and interesting. They're just playing to their strengths and, in my view, putting out a really, really solid record. Now, I did mention Torn Arteries by Carcass, their new record. A couple of folks hit me up and said that they were interested to know what I thought of the album. I have obviously seen on the socials that people really enjoy it. I will say, if you're about to be offended by the straight dope, you don't want to listen to the next 60 seconds. I think it is, with the exception of the first song, which is actually pretty good, the rest of the album is complete steaming horse poo. I think in the second song they use a cowbell, which already it spells doom for anything that's remotely convincingly menacing and mean and badass. It sounds to me like a watered-down version of Swan Song, which I didn't like either. I don't like the riffs. I don't like the melodies. I think when the record picks up speed, it sounds like old men trying to make fast music. There's frankly, like I said, outside of the first song, nothing I like about the album. So that's my opinion on Torn Arteries, which is why I wouldn't do an actual review of it. Like I said before, it'll be very, very rare that I will do a negative review on the show. I know I did one for The Last of Nell Nathrak. That I did because of how much I'd been looking forward to that album, and I'd spoken about it so many times on the show, so I kind of wanted to do something formal for it. But, I know there's a lot of people that like the new Carcass album, and, before their fans start weeping and sending me messages saying, there's more people that listen to Carcass in a day that'll listen to your stupid little podcast in a lifetime. I know that. I don't give a shit. I just don't. It's just not for me. Another band that's not for me, Sarka, who actually used to do stuff that wasn't too bad, but this new Sarka song is just complete and utter nonsense. It says here, as part of their next long player, Sarka present second new single, Beheading of the Circus Director. I spoke about the contest for worst metal lyrics in the history of the genre, and this one comes pretty close. I'm not going to bother even watching it, but do yourself a favor and have a gander at that. I mean, it's like something. It's like the scribblings of an 11-year-old in the back of their math book when they're bored in class. Anthrax in the studio. Anthrax drummer Charlie Benante recently posted pictures from the studio via Facebook, confirming that they've been hard at work making new noise for their long-awaited follow-up to 2016's For All Kings, which is expected to service in 2022. The latest studio activities were also confirmed by frontman Joey Belladonna through his own Facebook page. Am I excited about this? No, not really. As I've said many times before, I'm a John Bush man. I like Among the Living, but for the most part, Joey Belladonna's voice is akin to the sound that I heard this morning when I was barreling the mighty black BMW down the highway. And all of a sudden, this fucking god-awful screaming was coming out of one of the wheel wells. Turns out there's a little stone that's gone into the back of one of the brake discs. Not something that's life-threatening, although I thought that the wheel was about to come flying off. But, yeah, I'd say Joey Belladonna's voice and a stone in my car's brake pad gives me around about the same amount of enjoyment. Ministry release video for Disinformation track. So I did a quick skim through to this debacle over the weekend, in part because I felt obligated to do so. As I've said before, I love Ministry. Psalm 69, phenomenal record. Filth Pig, incredible record. I like the whole Bush trilogy. I even had some time for that, I think it was From Beers to Eternity. There were a couple of cool songs in there. But when Al decided, I know my Euros, Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo on CNN, they've been saying some really nasty stuff about this Trump guy. I reckon I should jump on that train. It's, again, just turned into unlistenable nonsense. There's a cool beat at the start of, I think the song is called Alert Level or Alert Signal, the first song. But then they completely destroy that by having a sample of Greta Thunberg's voice. And unless that sample is followed by the sound of her being thrown overboard on a pirate ship, I'm not interested in hearing it. I mean, the rest of the record just sounds like the hackneyed, tired, stale, boring drivel that you can imagine it would be. He's still going on about Trump, even though his man is now in the White House. There's nothing switched on about any of the lyrics. There's nothing switched on about any of the music. It's total and utter shite. As a matter of fact, I'll do my best to do a Manchester accent, and apologies in advance to all the Manchester listeners. But just to give it a somewhat different slant, my review of the new Ministry record is fucking shit, mate. I know that was probably one of the worst impressions of a Mancunian ever to be recorded, but anyway. Hypocrisy Unleashed, Dead World. Dead World is officially out. The newest single from the Hypocrisy's long-awaited new studio album Worship is available for streaming down under. Album release date November the 26th, 2021. The riff on the song is not bad, but if memory serves me correctly, the lyrics in the chorus are something like, I hate you, you hate me, just... mind-blowing that grown men in 2021 can write absolute fucking drivel like that. Mastodon launched Tear Drinker single. I'm very surprised by this. It's rather different for Mastodon, but then again, they've not really been a band who are about sticking to a formula, or doing the same old shit over and over again, and more power to them for that. Did Tear Drinker make me more excited about their upcoming album, Hushed and Grim? Yes, I think that it did. It did make me think that maybe they were, they'd gotten into Brent's medicine cabinet when they said that, this is a really harsh record, because Tear Drinker is certainly not that. But I'll wait to hear what the rest of the album sounds like. This is a cool tune, and I've got a lot of love in my heart for Mastodon. Wolves in the Throne Room, European tour rescheduled for 2022. Again, I said there's going to be variations on that headline coming thick and fast over the next couple of months. More important than their tour being rescheduled is, I will say, that Primordial Arcana record continues to kick my ass. I fucking love it. And I would love to have one of these Wolves in the Throne Room guys on the podcast as well. But that Primordial Arcana, great album, and I would say very strong contender for the old top 20 of 2021. Lock Up unveil additional details and first single from upcoming album. Grindcore masters Lock Up have unleashed the first single video off their new album, The Dregs of Hades. The visual insanity is the work of Chariot of Black Moth. The forthcoming outing will be released in various formats on November the 26th, 2021, just in time for me to give it a critical listen before I finalize my lists of favorite records of the year. The song that I heard, I loved. And I'm going to say it once again. I really, really love the dual vocal combination of Kevin Sharp and Thomas Lindberg. I think they complement each other really well. I think it adds an additional layer of craziness and unpredictability, I think, to Lock Up. And I would really love to see that vibe in on stage. I think it would be awesome. Pupil Slicer share cover of Converge's track Concubine. I know when Gavin from the Damnation Festival was on the show, he's a big fan of Pupil Slicer. I've not really paid much attention to them. I don't like the band name, which is probably part of why I would not have bothered listening to the band. But I will give them a try at some point. I do like me some Converge, so if they're influenced by those guys, then who knows, they might be all right. And then Light of the Morning Star, upcoming record streaming in full. I did talk about this earlier. Great record, well worth you checking out, just in case you didn't catch me the first time. Rivers of Nile, on the other hand, not so much. False metal, weak metal, and wimp metal. Those are the three genres that the muck that they produced on this new album that fits in with most. Selbst drop new music video 1 year after the release of Selbst's second album, Relatos de Angustia. The South American duo teamed up with visual artist Fabio Rincones once again to create a brand new clip for one of the songs, sculpting the dirtiness of its existence. Everybody who has listened to this show for more than 12 months knows that I am a massive fan of Selbst. I had Jonathan of Selbst on the show. Relatos de Angustia was one of my favorite records of last year. The video is fucking cool. Go check it out if you haven't done so already. And if you aren't a fan of Selbst, you are either deaf or a purveyor of wimpiness and falseness. Let's move on to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, and better known as Blabbermouth. The first 1 year, Metallica releases pro-shot video of Ride the Lightning performance from Louder Than Life Festival. I wonder why James doesn't change his vocal pitch on a couple of these old songs, because when you listen to him do Ride the Lightning, I listened to a couple of clips from that San Francisco club, I think it was in San Francisco, the club show that they played, and he sounded absolutely terrible. So obviously with the new songs he'll kind of temper down some of those riffs and some of those vocal lines to suit his voice in the present day, but there's nothing wrong with him maybe just reinterpreting some of those vocal lines a little bit, because the way it sounds right now, it's just fucking embarrassing. Anyways, this was a very, very, very sad news. The next headline: Agnostic Front's Roger Murray undergoes surgery in his battle with cancer. There's a video that was posted on Instagram yesterday, and you could hear the person that was recording this was crying. Really, really rough. It says here apparently it was shot by his wife. It says Agnostic Front vocalist Roger Murray says he should feel better soon after undergoing another surgery in his battle with cancer. Earlier this year, Murray was diagnosed with cancer. A long road of tests and diagnoses led to a complex initial surgery and lengthy hospital stay. Even though the original surgery was complicated, the results were extremely positive. The cancer was successfully removed, and Roger is now in complete remission, and all signs of cancer have disappeared. On Sunday, October the 3rd, Agnostic Front's official Instagram was updated with a new video message from Roger, apparently shot by his wife at a hospital, in which he says, in part, "I just had a surgery done and I'll feel really better really soon. I'll feel better really, really soon. I should feel better soon because I had an infection. I was running a fever for 2 weeks straight. So no need to worry, no one. We're staying positive, and really I'm so grateful of each and every one of you for just your love and your support and everything you've all come together for. It's been heartfelt." From me to Roger, I hope you stay strong, brother, and I hope you get better soon. I don't talk about it all that often on this show, but Agnostic Front's music has been a huge influence on my life. The lyrics has been a huge influence on my life and probably the way that I approach life, quite frankly. And I think that I once had the pleasure of meeting Roger and Vinny. He's a great guy. And I know his music has meant an awful lot to a lot of people too. So I hope you get better soon, Roger. Anyways, right. Moving on. Dave Grohl says he has many ideas for new Nevermind cover in wake of child sexual exploitation lawsuit. I can't believe that this is even a topic of, not even a topic of discussion, that this is even a possibility that they're going to have to change the cover of this album. All because some fucking lowlife welfare sponge decides that he wants to cash in on his Nirvana fame and apparently accuse them of sexual exploitation of a child. I'm not going to go into detail on it because frankly I don't think that fucking dweeb deserves any airtime. But there's pathetic and then there's Insulate Britain levels of pathetic. And for anybody that doesn't know, Insulate Britain are, imagine the Extinction Rebellion 10 times more annoying. And and then you've got Insulate Britain. Savatage legend John Oliver arrested. Is it John Oliver? Yeah, John Oliver arrested for DUI and cocaine possession. Apparently, he enlisted the services of the same photographer who took Corey Taylor's storied COVID-19 photo. You know, the out of focus, up the nostril, make me look as fucking terrible as you possibly can photo. It says here that legendary Savatage singer John Oliver was arrested earlier this week on the west central coast of Florida for driving under the influence as well as possession of a controlled substance later identified to be cocaino. Fuck him and fuck that overrated shit band. Lars Ulrich says Metallica's return to the live stage has been very emotional on every level. I'm not going to talk about that baby's nonsense, but what I will say is I recently saw another article, and I don't know whether this was dated or what it was, but it was on a website called Metal Addicts, and it was on kind of the one of the main sort of preview windows when you get on the site, where Dave Mustaine says that apparently Lars is afraid of playing new Big Four shows. I had always thought that after the... actually, speaking of Dave Mustaine, I've just scrolled past a Dave Mustaine... what's the name? Dave Mustaine article. But I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is this. I thought, following on from the many video clips of them hugging and making up and burying the hatchet, that it was over and done. But apparently not for old Dave. He continues to complain and moan and snivel like a whiny little bitch about Metallica at every opportunity that he possibly can. And you would imagine with the amount of success this guy's had and the many, many opportunities afforded him because he was in Metallica and, went on to be very successful with Megadeth, that he would at some point shut the fuck up about it, but he just can't seem to be able to do so. And on general principle, I will never again listen to anything by Megadeth, barring Rust in Peace, because that's so cool. I can overlook his idiocy. So, Napalm Death's Shane Embry is the focus of an upcoming book. Napalm Death bassist Shane Embry has been a major figure in grindcore for more than 4 decades, and his story is closely tied to the history of that scene. Tentatively due in 2022 via Rocket 88, a new book called Life and Napalm Death will take the reader on a front-seat white-knuckle ride. I am very, very glad that the world is finally waking up to the fact that Shane Embry is a treasure who we should all take time to appreciate while he's still around. I know he's in his 50s now, so it's not like the dude is at death's door, but there will come a time when he, like all of our heroes in the old guard, are going to hang up their spurs. And I've said this many times. You can go back to shows that are 12 months old, 18 months old in this podcast. I've said many times, this is a dude that I think people are only going to realize how important and how vital an influence he was in this scene when he's gone. And that'll be a shame because, I do think that he deserves more. And I still do hope that he's going to come on the podcast. I have been talking again to his management about when that's going to happen. So it's still on the cards, hopefully before the end of the year. But, I think he's a fucking badass. I love Napalm Death, Lockup, Dark Sky Burial, Bulgaria. The dude just doesn't seem to do a misstep. Tronos was a fantastic record as well, that record he did with Russ Russell. The guy's just a total badass. That's all there is to it. And I'll tell you something else. That's all there is to this week's installment of the news. I'm going to zip my lip and get out of here. Thank you to the few and the proud that stuck around until the very end of the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Once again, I'm overly critical probably, but I listened back to that episode and I thought, why the fuck do you have to say right after almost every single sentence? That really annoyed me, but just thought I would share. Anyways, I'll be back next week for episode 100. Who will I have on? Will it be Glenn Benton? Will it be Phil Anselmo? Would it be Donald Trump Jr.? Not if I want to have any listeners left for episode 101. I am going to play out with a song that is off a record that I am very, very excited about. The record's called Genocidal Right. The band is called Church Burn. This is a song called Swallowed by Dust. And I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week.